Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notifications. Michael Vance was 34. He carried on his shoulders the weight of a job most people couldn't handle for long. As a firefighter in Denver, Colorado, he faced flames, toxic smoke, and situations where every single second could mean the difference between life and death. It was a job that demanded physical courage, yes, but also an emotional strength, a discipline he had meticulously built over 9 years on the force. The 24-hour shifts at Station 7 were exhausting, a drain on the body and the soul. But Michael never complained. He knew that when he got home, he'd find the life he had built, the sanctuary he had earned. He'd find Sarah, his wife of 8 years, and Lily, his 5-year-old daughter, who lit up every room with a laughter that could erase the memory of any fire and endless questions about the world. Sarah was 32. She had a quiet strength that Michael had always seen as the perfect complement to his own. He remembered meeting her a decade ago, at a friend's barbecue. He was struck by her serene beauty, straight blonde hair falling over her shoulders, expressive blue eyes, and a smile he still, even now, found captivating. He told his friend that night that he was going to build a world for her. A fortress, where she would never have to worry about a single thing. And in his mind, he had done exactly that. He had delivered on his promise. Their house was in a quiet neighborhood south of Denver. A single-story home with a sprawling backyard, where Lily spent hours playing with the family's golden retriever, Buster. Michael's life was built on pillars he believed were forged from steel. Family, work, loyalty. These weren't just words to him. They were a code. On his days off, he was a different man from the one who faced down infernos. He woke up early to make pancakes, crafting them into animal shapes for Lily. He took her to school on the days his shifts allowed, cherishing that small moment of handing her backpack to her at the classroom door. And Friday nights. Friday nights were sacred. They were reserved for home-cooked dinners with Sarah. The television stayed off. They would talk about their week. His stories, always carefully edited, stripped of the true horror. He'd listen intently to her tales from the downtown clinic where she worked as a nutritionist. They made plans. For the weekend. For summer vacations. For the future. They laughed at inside jokes only they understood, a private language built over 8 years of marriage. He would look at her across the table, the candlelight dancing in her eyes, and feel a profound sense of accomplishment. This was it. This was the perfect life he had constructed. Brick, by painful, hard-working brick. He provided. He protected. He was present. He worked grueling shifts that would break other men, and then came home and poured every remaining ounce of his energy into being a husband and a father. He believed their foundation was unshakable. That their bond was the one constant in a world of chaos. He was the guardian of this perfect portrait. The man who stood at the gates and kept the dangers of the world at bay. It was a world he had fought to create. A world he never imagined could be shattered from within. It didn't happen all at once. It was a slow erosion. A series of tiny, almost imperceptible shifts that, on their own, meant nothing. But together, they formed a troubling pattern. A pattern that began to gnaw at the edges of Michael's certainty. It started about 3 months ago. Sarah began going to the gym with an obsessive regularity that felt foreign. She had always been healthy, but this was different. She would leave the house at 6 in the morning, even on days she didn't have to be at the clinic early. Michael, often just getting home from a long shift, would pass her in the hallway. Her gym bag slung over her shoulder, a determined look on her face he didn't recognize. Then came the clothes. She replaced her entire wardrobe, piece by piece. The comfortable, practical clothes she used to wear were swapped for brands she'd once called frivolous. New dresses. Expensive jeans. Tops that seemed designed more for attention than for comfort. She cut her long blonde hair into a more modern, stylish bob. She started wearing more elaborate makeup, even on days she was just running errands. And then, the social life. She started going out with friends from the clinic at least twice a week. These nights, they always ended late. She would slip into bed long after he was asleep, and in the morning, he could smell the faint, sour scent of wine on her breath. Her explanations were always vague, delivered with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, just networking. It was a girls' night. We just lost track of time." He tried to ignore the knot tightening in his stomach. He told himself, she was just taking better care of herself. Finding a new confidence. It was healthy, wasn't it? That's what he was supposed to believe. But there was more. The phone. Her phone, once a shared device they'd used to look up recipes, had become a fortress. It was now locked with a passcode he didn't know. She carried it with her, everywhere. From the kitchen to the living room. She even started taking it into the bathroom when she showered. When it rang, she would glance at the screen. And step away to answer. Her voice dropping to a murmur. If he asked who it was, the answer was always the same. A patient. A co-worker. The distance became physical. At night, when Michael moved closer in bed, seeking the familiar comfort of her body, he was met with a subtle resistance. Sarah would say she was tired. That she had a headache. Or she would simply turn over, creating a physical distance he felt as an emotional chasm. The space between them, in their own bed, felt miles wide. He tried to talk to her. One evening, after Lily was asleep, he found her scrolling silently on her phone. He sat down opposite her. "Is everything okay, Sarah? You seem distant lately." She looked up. And for a second, just a second, he thought he saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a practiced, reassuring smile. "Of course, honey. I'm just stressed from work. Things will settle down soon. I promise." She reached over and patted his hand. A gesture that felt more like a dismissal than affection. He wanted to believe her. He was a man who believed in foundations. In the structures he built. To admit that his own was cracking was to admit failure. But his gut, the same instinct that warned him of a collapsing roof or a flashover, was screaming at him. It whispered a single, ugly word he refused to acknowledge. He was a man who ran into burning buildings, but he was terrified of the cold truth that might be living under his own roof. It was a Wednesday morning. Michael had just finished a brutal 24-hour shift. He was exhausted. Every muscle ached from fighting a commercial warehouse fire that had burned through most of the night. The smell of smoke was embedded in his skin, in his hair. A permanent reminder of the chaos. He was in the locker room, slowly peeling off his gear, when David Chen, his friend, his brother, pulled him aside. The look on David's face was wrong. The usual easygoing expression was gone, replaced by a grim tension. "Mike, man," he began, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I need to tell you something, and it's not going to be easy." Michael felt his stomach tighten. The exhaustion evaporated, replaced by a cold surge of adrenaline. "What is it?" His voice was hoarse. David took a deep breath. "Last night, I was having dinner with my wife at Carmine's. That Italian place downtown. We were sitting near the window, and I saw Sarah." He paused. The silence in the locker room was deafening. She was with a guy, Mike. And this wasn't work-related. The world seemed to tilt. Michael leaned against a locker for support, the cold metal a shock against his back. They were holding hands, David continued, his voice thick with empathy, laughing. "Sharing dessert. It was intimate. I took some pictures. Because I knew you wouldn't believe me if I just told you." David pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and handed it over. The screen glowed. A scene from a life that wasn't his. The photos were sickeningly, horribly clear. There was Sarah, wearing a blue dress he didn't recognize, sitting at a small table lit by candles. Beside her, a young man. Late 20s. Neatly trimmed dark hair, an athletic build. They were smiling at each other. An intimacy that left no room for doubt. In one photo, their fingers were intertwined. In another, the man leaned in to whisper something in her ear. And Sarah, she laughed. Her head tilted back, her hand lightly touching his arm. Her smile. That was the worst part. It was a genuine, carefree smile. The kind of radiant expression he hadn't seen directed at him in months, the smile of a woman without a single worry in the world. A woman who wasn't thinking about her husband fighting a fire across town. Michael felt his temples throb. He handed the phone back to David. Without a word. "Man, I'm really sorry," David said quietly. "But you needed to know." Michael just nodded. A single, sharp dip of his chin. He mumbled a silent thanks and left the locker room, before anyone else could see the cracks forming on his face. He got in his truck, locked the doors, and sat there. In the silence of the station parking lot, his hands shook on the steering wheel, his mind raced. A chaotic storm of betrayal. Who was that guy? How long? How many times had she lied? All the nights out with the girls. All the obsessive gym sessions. All the whispered phone calls. It all clicked into place, forming a hideous mosaic of deceit. Michael had always been a man of action. At work, he never hesitated. Now, faced with the smoldering ruins of his own life, he would apply the same determination. He took out his phone. His fingers were surprisingly steady. He sent David a short message. "Send me the photos." Then he called the station chief. He needed a few days off. Personal reasons. He needed answers. And he was going to get them. That night. He got home around 3 in the afternoon. The house was empty. Silent. Suffocating. He walked through the rooms of the life he thought he had. Every familiar object now a prop in a play. He took a long, hot shower, but the water did nothing to cleanse the grime that had settled in his soul. He put on clean clothes, made a pot of strong, black coffee, and sat in the living room, his phone in his hand. He zoomed in on the images, torturing himself with every detail. Her smile, the way that man touched her arm. So natural. So familiar. With a cold resolve, he connected his phone to the printer. 6 pictures. All damning. He laid them out on the coffee table. And waited. Sarah got home around 7, with Lily. The moment she walked in, Lily rushed to him, her small arms wrapping tightly around his waist as she told him about a painting she'd made at school. Michael held her close. His heart breaking. Her innocent world was about to be shattered. He played his part. He helped with dinner. Gave her a bath. Read her a bedtime story. He waited until her breathing slowed into the deep, even rhythm of sleep, before he stepped out of her room. Sarah was in the kitchen. She wore a low-cut top and jeans. Her makeup still flawless. "You've been weird today," she remarked, not looking at him. "Something happen on your shift?" Michael didn't answer. He just stood there, watching her. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm, but steady, devoid of all warmth. "Come into the living room. We need to talk." A flicker of annoyance crossed her face, but she followed. She walked into the living room, and stopped. Dead in the doorway. Her eyes fixed on the table. Her face shifted. Confusion. Recognition. Then pure, unadulterated panic. "Michael, I can explain," she started, her voice trembling. "Explain what?" He interrupted, his voice low, sharp as glass. "Explain how you had the nerve?" Tears began to well. I didn't plan for this to happen. It just happened. He's Ryan. My personal trainer. We started talking, and I don't know, Michael, I felt so alone." "Alone?" The word dripped with contempt. "Don't you dare. Blame this on me," he cut in, raising his hand. "I work to provide for this home. I am here. I have always been here. So don't you try to justify cheating with loneliness." She sobbed, her hands covering her face. "How long?" Michael asked, his jaw tight. 2 months, she whispered. 2 months, he repeated, the word tasting like poison. 2 months of you sleeping in my bed, kissing our daughter goodnight, looking me in the eyes, and lying. How many times?" She didn't answer. "How many times, Sarah?" His voice rose, the anger finally breaking through his icy control. "I don't know. Maybe 5, 6 times," she admitted. He let out a laugh. A bitter, humorless sound. "And what does he have that I don't? He's younger? Better looking? Makes you feel special?" "It's not like that. He listens to me," she stammered. "He makes me feel desired. Young. Alive. With you, lately. I felt invisible." The word hit Michael like a punch to the gut. "Invisible," he repeated, his voice cracking for the first time. I work 24-hour shifts saving lives. I come home exhausted. And still make sure I am present. For you. For our daughter. And you call me invisible? Sarah tried to move closer, to reach for him, but he held up his hand. A barrier. No. Don't touch me. You made a choice. And now I'm making mine. This marriage is over. Michael, please. She begged. Think about Lily. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. We can fix this. I'll end it with him. We'll go to therapy. Therapy? He scoffed. You think therapy is going to erase these images from my head? You think I'll ever be able to trust you again? No, Sarah. You broke this. In a way that can't be fixed. She sank to her knees. I love you, Michael. I love our family. It was a moment of weakness. I'm begging you. He looked at her then, crumpled on the floor. And for the first time since seeing the photos, he felt something beyond anger. Pity. Pity for a woman who had thrown away everything, for a fleeting moment of feeling alive. You need to leave, he said, his voice firm. Final. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow morning. You pack your things and go. I don't care where. But you will not sleep in this house again. She tried to argue. To plead. But Michael simply turned his back on her. And walked upstairs. He locked himself in the guest room. And for the first time in years, he cried. Not for the end of his marriage, but for the profound betrayal, for the humiliation, and for the crushing pain of having to someday explain to Lily why Mommy and Daddy didn't live together anymore. In the days that followed, Michael moved with methodical precision. Emotion was a liability. Action was the only solution. He hired Robert Peterson, a family law attorney known for being aggressive and brutally effective. In Peterson's office, Michael laid out the situation. The photos. The lies. And his one, non-negotiable demand. Primary custody of Lily. Peterson listened. Took notes. In Colorado, he said, his voice calm, infidelity itself doesn't automatically determine custody. But we can use it to demonstrate a pattern of poor judgment that affects the child's well-being. We'll show you are the consistent, primary caregiver. Peterson's team got a court order. For her text messages. Her location data. The results were devastating. A digital chronicle of her deceit. Explicit conversations. Exchanged photos. Plans for dates made while Michael was on duty. One message, in particular, made Michael's blood run cold. Sarah to Ryan. He'll never suspect a thing. He's too naive, too wrapped up in his hero complex. The divorce was filed. Sarah's lawyer argued neglect, loneliness, that her mistake shouldn't impact her right to be a mother. But the evidence was an avalanche. Michael had records of every school event. Photos of family weekends. Testimonials from neighbors. From friends. David testified. All of it painting a clear picture of a devoted, active father. The judgment came. Primary custody of Lily was awarded to him. Sarah was granted supervised visitation. For the first 6 months. And Ryan? The 27-year-old personal trainer? He vanished. Blocked her number. Switched gyms. He had no interest in being a stepfather, or dealing with the mess he helped create. The irony wasn't lost on Michael. She had destroyed her family. For a coward. Sarah's professional life crumbled. Patients canceled. Coworkers grew cold. She quit her job, and moved into a small, sterile apartment on the other side of town. Far from everything she had so carelessly thrown away. 18 months later, Michael was in a different place. He wasn't the same man. But he was no longer broken. The pain was still there, a scar on his soul. But it no longer consumed him. He went to therapy. And he learned a crucial truth. Sarah's infidelity said nothing about his worth as a man. It said everything about her choices. Her character. He learned to separate who he was from what had happened to him. He devoted every minute to Lily. The park. Bike rides. Picnics in their backyard. He explained that Mommy and Daddy couldn't live together anymore, but they both loved her very much. And Lily, with the incredible resilience of a child, adjusted. Her anchor was her father. He learned to trust himself again. To find joy in small things. A laugh from Lily. A night of grilling with David. A quiet morning run. He even started dating again. Cautiously. He met Emily. An English teacher. She was kind. Patient. Warm. She admired his strength as a father, and wasn't intimidated by his past. They went out a few times. Slowly. Michael wasn't ready for deep commitments. But he appreciated the quiet possibility of building something new. On a foundation of honesty. Sarah tried to reconnect. Long text messages begging for forgiveness. Extravagant gifts for Lily. Suggestions of family dinners. Michael held firm boundaries. He responded only to practical matters concerning their daughter. His messages were polite. But brief. He made it clear. There was no room for reconciliation. The trust had been incinerated. There was nothing left to rebuild from. Justice. For Michael. Didn't come from a courtroom. It came from the certainty that he had protected his daughter, and his own dignity. It came from knowing that even when the ground had vanished from beneath his feet, he had found the strength to get back up, and rebuild on solid rock. It came from the peace of looking in the mirror and seeing a man who refused to accept less than he deserved. A man who taught his daughter through actions, not just words, that self-respect isn't negotiable. One afternoon, when Lily was almost 7, she asked him, "Daddy, why can't you and Mommy get back together?" He knelt down to her level. His expression serious. But gentle. "Sometimes, sweetie," he answered honestly, "people make choices that change everything. And when that happens, you have to have the courage to move forward. And build something better." Lily nodded. Not fully understanding the weight of his words, but feeling the unshakable strength behind them. And in that moment, Michael knew. Justice wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about choosing to live with integrity, even when the world around you fell apart. It was about becoming the pillar that would never, ever break. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.